Hello everyone, my name's Mark, aka Marco.
And I'm Bethel, aka Bella, and together we're Marcobella.
So Bethel, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, if you've been following our videos, you'll know that we've been talking about love, romance. We certainly have. It's been Valentine's Day and all that jazz. But we want to switch into a new topic, which is going to be really fun, which is finances. But instead of just switching, we're going to do a bridging topic. So we're going to mix love and finances together. And today we're going to be talking about the emotional love bank.
And to do that, what we've done is we've brought Lammy along. So we've had Lammy for the longest time ever. And Lammy happens to be our piggy bank. He's not a pig, but...
It's a Lammy bank.
It's a Lammy bank.
So we made Lammy on the day that Mark proposed to me. So he took me to this pottery place, and I thought he was going to propose to me at the pottery place, because when we got there, the lady was like, choose what you want to make. And then we walked around the shop, and then there was this big love heart that said, will you marry me? And I kind of just was
She actually thought that was me proposing.
And I literally walked away. I was like, I'm going to ignore that sign because that is a lame proposal. Bye-bye.
But that was so random. It's just some random...
I pretended I didn't see it, and I was like, Anyway, that wasn't his proposal. No. I guess it was a lead up to the proposal.
Not even. I hadn't even thought about that.
It wasn't planned that nothing was there, but it was there. So we decided to do a lamb because Jesus is the lamb. I know that's a bit spiritual, but that's why we decided to do a lamb. And we have Marcobella written there and all different designs.
Wasn't it because that was the only thing there?
No, there was loads of different things. What are you talking about?
Can't remember, but anyway.
Anywho, Lammy is another one of our prized possessions. If there was a fire, we'd run for. So
what's this about the emotional love bank? Tell me more, because I think Bethel's actually got a story about this.
So, have you ever wondered why sometimes you just love your partner, you are so in love with them and you can't get enough of them, and then sometimes
they can't nag you enough.
Sometimes they just annoy you and you just don't have any patience for them. Well, this is where the emotional love bank comes in. So everybody has emotional needs. And I think we've talked about that with your love languages and that kind of stuff. And it's your partner's job and your job to meet your partner's emotional needs. So you've got to meet each other's needs, right? And if you're not meeting those needs, then...
Go on, I'm listening.
He's being skeptical about what I'm saying.
I am being skeptical because I'm thinking there's probably people going and say, how does this link to a bank account?
Yes, we're getting there. So if you're not meeting each other's needs, then somebody else will meet them. So basically...
She went for basically. Wow.
Basically.
Yeah.
When I was a social work student, I had a supervisor who was tall, dark and handsome. It wasn't Mark.
No, it wasn't Mark.
It wasn't Mark. But he happened to be also Zimbabwean, which was so random. And he was tall, dark and handsome and Christian and everything. So subconsciously, this man was lining up with what my husband looks like. And yeah, I never thought about that. And then we had to do weekly supervision sessions. If any of you have practice in medicine or social work or any of those psychology, any of those kind of degrees, you have to do weekly supervision sessions, which means that you spend a lot of quality time with this person and you talk about your emotions, you talk about what's going on in your life, you talk about how work is affecting you, you talk about all these deep topics, right? So what happened is that I think maybe midway in my placement, I started to notice that every time I had a problem, every time I had something that was worrying me, instead of me wanting to call Mark, I wanted to call my supervisor. And I was a bit that's a bit weird. Why is that happening? And it so happened that at that time...
Is that when we were reading that book?
Mark was reading the book. So Mark is always reading a book about something. And it always happens to be around about the right time. So he was reading a book and I came home and thankfully we have a really open relationship in the sense that we talk about everything.
I think that's how it's supposed to be.
It should be like that, but not many people do. So even the hard stuff with how do I tell my husband that I actually want to talk to somebody else instead of him? So I came home and I was like, listen, this weird thing is happening. Like every time I'm feeling a certain way, instead of me saying, oh, let me call Mark and speak to him about it, I'm like, oh, let me call my supervisor.
And I think whilst you're on there, that's a really good point about how your relationship is supposed to serve you, because no matter what you're going through, whatever you're worried about and things like that, that relationship should be able to serve you in whatever capacity you're in. So even if you're going through something really difficult, the relationship should be able to help you to address that. And I think, you know, by God's grace, that's what we've been able to build, which is what Bethel's talking about. So.
Yeah. So when I said that, Mark was like, ooh, I'm reading this book.
I didn't go, whoa, what?
Yeah, he didn't go,
dare you?
oh, you're talking to this man. No, he was like, oh, I'm reading this book. And actually...
Imagine if I actually played that character. That'd be pretty interesting. I mean, we do acting, so... I can imagine just from a character reference point of view, I think it'll be quite interesting.
No, that wouldn't. No.
But anyway.
I would definitely my love bank. Anyway, let's not jump the gun. Right. So basically, he was like, it's a book called His Needs, Her Needs: How to Affair-Proof Your Marriage, and it's by Dr. Harley, and we will put a link in the description box.
Yeah.
And so he was reading that book at that time, and he's like, oh, I think I know what's happening. So basically, he explained to me that there is this thing called an emotional love bank.
And that's where Lammy comes into play.
And every time you meet someone, you know, and you have a positive interaction, you make a deposit, or they make a deposit in your
emotional
love bank. So you will have an emotional love bank for everybody in your life.
Your family, your friends, colleagues, you name it.
Every person. And they're either going to be in the positives, the negatives, or the...
Credit or debit.
Credit or debit.
Or pure debt.
Pure debt. So, yeah. So, basically, once you meet somebody, it's like if you have a positive interaction, that's automatically a cash in, right? And that's when you meet your partner and you're like, oh, he's stunning, cash in. And they do something nice, cash in. And they say something nice, cash in. And they buy you something nice, cash in. You know, and that's why especially when you're in courtship, there's a lot of cashing in. Because
all positive interactions.
All positive interactions.
Yeah,
it's just like every time you see each other, it's like fireworks. It's like, oh my gosh. And you know, because you always got your best foot forward when you're dating, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's why some people also think like, oh my gosh, this guy was amazing when we were dating, but like when we
You've changed.
It's like, you've changed. But actually, maybe that's because he snores. Deduction. Or debit.
Hey, you made me sound like I'm the one that snores there. It's quite...
Currently pregnant, so we won't...
Quite the opposite.
Okay, guys, so let's forget about the snoring. But, right, okay, or they leave, whatever, in the wrong place.
Noise-cancelling headphones.
They leave stuff in the wrong place and it just grinds you. Or they have these little habits that just, oh my gosh, which you wouldn't have seen when you were dating because you don't live with them, right? If you don't live together.
So every time you experience one of those, what, they're making a...
Deduction
from
your emotional love bank.
Okay, so when something then happens, they don't have any grace.
Yeah, so it's like, have you ever, like, when your husband does something silly and it's like, or your wife does something silly and you're just like, some days you have so much grace for them, they're like, oh, it's okay, hon, don't worry about it, I love you, it's all good. And then some days, you know, they do something and you're just like, what? And that's because it's depending on where your emotional love bank is at that point.
So if it's really high, then that means you've got a lot of grace.
You've got a lot of grace,
really
you've
low,
got a lot of love, you're just like, it's fine. If it's really low and they haven't been making those credits, you're going to be like, right. So when he said that, it made total sense because obviously one of my emotional needs is quality time, being able to talk and be listened to and explain myself, which Mark does amazingly.
Oh, thank you, Beth. Not quite sure what was going on at that time, but...
No, it was just because I was doing social work and it was a necessity for me to speak to this person.
Right.
So it happened subconsciously. It wasn't even a planned thing. It just happened such that I have to talk to this person about everything about, you know, school and how I'm feeling, emotions, all this course, blah, 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 blah. So by the time I come home to Mark, I've already had that conversation, so I don't need to have that conversation
because there's that point about women have 30,000 words to use in a day, and so by the time she'd come home, she'd already spent about 29,000 words. So she'd only say, hi, how's your day been, and then she's done. Of which, like she's saying, so that quality time where she would have normally spoken to me, she'd already had that.
And he would have been the one sort of like deducing and helping me to break down stuff and calculate stuff.
Yeah.
But actually that was happening in my supervision sessions or in the visits that I was doing with my supervisor and that kind of stuff. So actually when I was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. Like my supervisor definitely has an emotional love. I have an emotional love bank for my supervisor. And this is where the book actually is really, really good because it talks about how affairs happen.
Yeah.
And just knowing that information, we are so much clearer on how important it is to have boundaries in any relationship that you have outside of your marital relationship. We're not talking about parents and all that kind of stuff. We're talking about friends or colleagues or other people like that.
Because where you're having continued conversations with other people, you're probably not aware how they are depositing into your account. So as Beth was saying, you find that sometimes when sometimes you find some person, a colleague or friend that they're just funny, right?
Yeah.
So every time you find out, whenever you want to laugh, you want to
go to that person.
To that person. And so that in a way replaces your spouse.
Your spouse, exactly. Or it's like maybe you're having a really stressful day and that person always brings you a coffee right on time. You know, they just always happen to bring that coffee right on time. Or they've gone out and they've bought donuts and you're a donut person and they remember your flavor. You know, things like that, right? So what I love about his needs and her needs is that it's saying that anybody at all, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a Christian, whether you're not a Christian, whether you're a minister, whether you're not a minister, anyone can fall into an affair. Absolutely. And this is because...
And not for trying, but it's just...
It's because of this emotional love bank. Because if that person keeps making deposits and deposits and deposits, and obviously when you're living your everyday life at home...
An emotional attachment.
And that if your love bank between your husband and your spouse is not high, and maybe there's some deductions happening at home, then it's going to get to a place where the other person's love bank is higher than your spouse's, and that is a dangerous place to be, right? I guess the most important...
So how did you address it at that time then? After having that conversation, what was the kind of...
I think after having the realization of it, I was just really more aware of like the things I was talking to him about, and like if something was really, really emotional, instead of me being like, oh, let me tell my supervisor first, making the conscious effort to be like, let me tell Mark first. And then I can talk to my supervisor as a secondary situation, but at least Mark would have dealt with the initial feelings and the emotions, so that would go to him. So the cash in would go to Mark, not to the supervisor, if that makes sense. And then just being really aware, like I don't have to spend like umpteen time talking to this person. Let us know what you think about emotional love banks. If you can, get the book His Needs, Her Needs. It's an amazing
Fantastic book. Absolutely
amazing read, and it just gives you really practical tips on how to meet each other's needs and how to affair-proof a marriage.
And I think most importantly, in addition to everything that Bethel's said, go away and buy your own little lammy.
No,
right?
You don't have to buy a lamb.
We might put a link in the description box of... Well, if you want to buy ours, you're more than welcome to. Of course, it says Marcobella in there.
It's priceless.
And we'll give it to the highest bidder.
You do not need to buy your own lammy, but just be aware of your own emotional love banks.
Yeah.
And actually do a little check-in with your partner. Like, where's the love bank?
Where are you exactly? I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And again, it just brings back the point of just being aware of what your spouse's emotional needs are.
Yes.
And what ticks those boxes, and just being able to continuously make those deposits every single time. That's the key thing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. We'll see you again on the next one.